Today's special post-trade deadline episode of the BS Podcast brought to you by SeatGeek. That's been our presenting sponsor since 1976. Basketball, NHL, music, wrestling, opera. My mom buys opera tickets on SeatGeek. She swears by the deals. There's got to be at least 3 people listening to this podcast who also like operas. Buy and sell your tickets in just 2 taps on your phone with SeatGeek. Everything fully guaranteed, and it's the best place to shop for tickets thanks to their revolutionary grading system. Check it out. Download the SeatGeek app today or go right to SeatGeek.com. I got to be honest, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while and you haven't gone to SeatGeek yet, you're hurting my feelings. Not as much as it hurt Chris Ryan's feelings when they traded Nerlens Noel yesterday, but almost as much. We're also brought to you by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. They bring the mortgage process into the 21st century. We're 17 years into the 21st century, so that makes sense. Do everything on your phone or tablet. If you're looking to refinance your mortgage or buy a home, check out Rocket Mortgage today at quickenloans.com/Bill Simmons, equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLSconsumeraccess.org, number 3030. Again, quickenloans.com/Bill Simmons. And also, we're brought to you by TheRinger.com. That's where I wrote a post-trade deadline mailbag that at some point is going up today or this weekend. We had a disaster, which we'll talk about in a second with that column, thanks to my laptop. But I put up a bunch of podcasts this week. We had 2 BS podcasts, JJ Redick and Ben Thompson from Stratechery. Very happy with those. But then I also went on the Ringer NBA show to talk about the Boogie Cousins trade. I went on the Ringer NFL show to ask Mike Lombardi what was going to happen with NFL free agency. And I went on Bachelor Party.
6 pods in 1 week.
It was a 6 podcast week, Chris Ryan. That's what the trade deadline does for me. So we have Kevin O'Connor, Chris Ryan, and my friend Joe House on the line. We're going to do a 4-man trade deadline podcast. But first, Eddie Vedder.
Which one of us is Buke and which one of us is Steiny Rowe in this situation? And then what does that make House?
It's a lot of pressure for whoever's Buke.
That's the wrong analogy. The proper way to think about this is as a delicious Cubano sandwich. Let's talk about some ingredients. It's lunchtime out here on the East Coast, Chris Ryan.
You
We
ready
got
to
your
roll?
roast pork, your glazed ham, delicious Swiss cheese, and I already know who's going to be the dill pickle. The dill pickle brings it all together and adds that little crunch. That's my boy Kevin O'Connor. Kevin O'Connor's the dill pickle here.
What's going on, Joe?
We might as well just make that the start of the podcast. That's Joe House, Kevin O'Connor from The Ringer, Chris Ryan. Trade deadline happened. Disappointing actual end of the deadline, but for the most part, an action-packed month.
Yeah, a hell of a early part of the deadline. Ibaka and Boogie. I mean,
Boogie was a monster trade.
Boogie's a monster
Boogie
trade.
ruined our 3-day presidential weekend.
yeah.
Which I both appreciate and didn't appreciate. We did have company at my house, one of my wife's good friends and her husband, and just was not expecting to be on my iPad for 7 straight hours refreshing Twitter. Did you see that coming, Kevin?
It kind of just took over the All-Star game.
Yeah, that
That's
was-
what
Yeah.
I thought. I mean, like I was sitting next to Micah Peters from The Ringer, and suddenly it became like looking at your phone, wondering what Woj was going to bomb next, and not watching the game on the floor in front of us.
Woj carpet bombed the All-Star game house.
He was the only interesting thing about the All-Star game.
I know. You know, the Boogie thing overshadowed what would have been the subplot of that All-Star game, which was how bad the All-Star game is. And there's
Which is
this...
that it sucked.
Yeah, well, you know, on the one hand, it's like, who cares? It's the All-Star game. But on the other hand, I don't understand why it has to be terrible. I don't understand why we've just completely given up on defense or any semblance of actual basketball play. But I guess that's a story for another time. You were there. It was horrible, right?
Yeah, I mean, I thought all 3 nights were kind of horrible, really, in terms of the product on the floor. I like Steve Kerr's idea. You know, there needs to be some incentive for the players, whether it's charity or something like that, that incentivizes the players to play defense, because it's not fun at this point right now.
What would you do, Chris Ryan?
I can't think of anything you would do unless you were actually going to make it a worthwhile thing for the players. Like unless you financially incentivize it, I don't really know why would you go out there and you like risk twisting an ankle.
I was thinking you make it 4 quarters. Each quarter is a
You have
fresh
to win
start.
the quarter.
To win the quarter, and every quarter is worth like $5 million
Oh, it's like a
for the
skins
team.
game.
Yeah, it's almost like and maybe it rolls over
Yeah.
if it's a tie. And it's got to be, the answer has to be better than what we witnessed. It's too bad because I feel like until about 91, 92, the guys actually tried in the All-Star game, and it meant something, and it really meant like who was on the court at the end of the games and things like that. Anyway, Boogie Cousins, we've had a few days. The best theories I've heard about what happened on Sunday, one was that the trade was done before the All-Star game, and the NBA told them we can't announce it till after. You're not ruining the All-Star game, which I actually do you believe that one.
I mean, Boogie certainly doesn't believe that because he found out about that at the locker after the game, so he didn't have any idea. That was a super genuine reaction.
But what if the teams agreed before the All-Star?
Well, Vlade suggests otherwise because Vlade said he had
Okay.
a better deal 2 days prior to Sunday, that he didn't take it and he needed to take what he could get.
Do you believe that story?
I
or no,
know
Kevin?
generally the NBA likes to wait to hold trade calls on Mondays, right?
Right.
So I do buy into that, but it did seem like, with the timing of everything, that they were still looking for better offers out there, despite the fact that Vivek Ranadive obviously loved Buddy Hield, and that's the guy he wanted.
House, what do you think?
The report that I saw suggested that they had a better deal in place with New Orleans, that the deal got worse, and that the culprit in terms of the deal getting worse was DeMarcus's agent, who was trying to scuttle the thing by any means necessary so they could get to the summer and try and get Boogie that mega max.
Yeah, he said he
vet.
wouldn't re-sign with anybody who traded for him.
That was a Rick
Yeah.
Bucher report. I still feel like I keep looking at the Lakers and how that all played out. And I know for a fact, because I've talked to people, that Mitch Kupchak was trying to trade for Boogie that whole weekend. And then all of a sudden, and then he's gone. So I've been wondering, was there a Laker trade that he wanted to do that then Jeannie Buss called Magic and was like, Magic, we're about to do this trade. What should we do? And he's like, that's great. And then he pulled a power play.
Or was there a Laker trade that he didn't want to do?
That Magic said, that's crazy. We should
gotta
have done
get-
that.
Yeah, because Boogie is, when you look at the legacy of the Lakers, they're just always defined by having a great center, right?
Yes.
And that this makes sense. So the fact that maybe he didn't want to include Ingram or whatever it was that he didn't want to include, we don't know. I could see that being more than Kupchak being like, I want to do this deal, and Jeannie and Magic saying like, no, we have to keep Ingram.
But they didn't have their first round pick is the part I don't get.
I think
It's not a guaranteed pick.
That's the issue for them, like in any trade. I know Jake Fisher from Sports Illustrated reported that the Lakers held out Ingram in Boogie talks, hoping to use him for Butler or Jordan, which kind of makes sense. But
Yeah.
even then, they can't do that until the summer because they don't have their pick right now.
House, do you like Brandon Ingram?
He's okay. He's still he's so young and still so skinny. I feel like he has growing. It's not a perfect comparison to compare him to Bradley Beal, but Bradley Beal has been growing since he arrived here in Washington. He is, for this season, for the first time, looks like he's in the body that he's going to be in for the rest of his professional career. So I give Ingram kind of an incomplete right now. He's not physical enough to compete and be on the floor for 30 minutes a game.
What's the deal with Duke
but
guys coming
he's
into
got
the
the
league
skill.
and not looking good?
Duke guys.
Like Duke guys coming into the league and not being physically right there yet.
Now you're just trying to get Tate more involved in this podcast. I feel like.
Isn't that true though?
Tate.
Is that because I heard the rumor because they all go eat at the same place in North Carolina and it's not good for them.
You think it's like the smoking and
Carlos
drinking?
Boozer came in ready.
Yeah, Carlos Boozer was 30 when he came in. I think
He
that's
was
part of it.
30. That's right. But he came in ready.
That place aged Carlos Boozer, but Okafor, Kyrie was dinged up when he came into the league. Jabari.
I said this to Chris Vernon on the Ringer NBA show on Monday. If Ingram was the deal breaker, I don't understand that. And you follow the college way more than I do, Kevin. But I'm not ruling out anything with Ingram. He tries hard. He seems like he could develop into something. I just haven't seen enough of the flashes yet.
I think with Ingram, I would have him ranked behind Jason Tatum this year and Josh Jackson, maybe Jonathan Isaac too. I think Ingram's
wow.
really good. I think he'll be a really good player. But some of those Kevin Durant comparisons we saw last season, that's just outrageous. Like Ingram's a solid
said
overall
that?
player.
Yes.
I want to send that person a present, and it's not going to smell good.
He's tall and skinny like Kevin Durant was.
Yeah,
I mean,
like-
Kevin Durant had one of the greatest college seasons anyone's ever had, and was playing out of position at the 5 and was carrying their offense and was putting up double doubles
I
every
was playing
night.
for Rick Barnes.
Yeah, it was playing
Yeah.
for Rick Barnes, and he was insane that season. He knew he was a freshman.
Whereas Ingram is more solid overall. Like, people talk about him as a scorer, but he's a pretty good passer too. I look at him as kind of like the second guy behind your star. So, for the Pacers, obviously you're not going to just accept Brandon Ingram and D'Angelo Russell in a trade. You're going to want that Lakers pick if they were able to keep it.
Well, I think I want to get back to Boogie, but just quickly on the Pacers, there's no way that they're trading Paul George in February when they don't know how the lottery is going to play out. And that's why I was very skeptical with this whole thing. Unless Paul George went to them and said, I'm 26, I want to play for a title this season, which he didn't. You keep him. You wait. You want to see, their best case scenario is the Lakers get the first pick and the Celtics get the second pick, and they just play them off each other, for Paul George. And what happens if the Lakers get the 5th pick and the Celtics get the 3rd pick?
Or Brian Colangelo ends up getting the Lakers pick and the Sixers win the lottery themselves, and they decide to end the process and, go all in, trade those picks for Paul George, even if they aren't sure that he's willing to re-sign there.
Go ahead, Chris Ryan.
You want to do this now?
Yeah, let's do it now. We'll go back to Boogie.
That's great. That would be a great scenario. I don't know if I would actually even, given what people are saying about this draft, would you trade the 1 and the 3 for Paul George?
Like 1 and 4.
1 and the
1 and the
3?
4? Would you trade 1 and 4 for Paul George?
I went through this when I was writing my column. Really took a look at Paul George, 7th best forward in the league, right? Mm-hmm. He can't make the All-NBA team this year because there's 6 forwards better than him. He's 26. He's like a 43% shooter. He's a 22, 6, and 3 every game. He's a great defensive player. I wouldn't say he's the best, but he's on the level below Kawhi. And he can fit in with whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I like the
small
fact
but
that he
big
plays
ball.
off the ball. Yeah.
He's very good. He went to war with LeBron in 2 conference finals. It's not like you're getting Kawhi Leonard. I think there's the 8 players that are the best. And then there's guys underneath them, and he's one of the guys underneath them. And to that, it's I wouldn't trade the 1. I would trade 1 of those picks. I would trade 1 for Paul George. I wouldn't trade 1 and 3. I think that's insane.
I'm so through the looking glass on this that I can't. One of the things that I wanted to see yesterday, and one of the reasons why the Sixers deadline was so disappointing, was because I wanted, if you were going to trade guys like Nerlens and Jaleel with those picks, I wanted them to be part of a package for a
bigger
superstar.
pick. Yeah.
I don't want to just give away 2 top 5 draft picks in the best draft we've seen in a long time for what you're saying, a guy who's basically an A-. You know, you're hoping that you get an A+ in that draft, right? That's the whole point of going through these years of accruing these picks.
House, what do you think?
I think of it from the Pacers' point of view. They made the calculus that there's a no downside trial balloon to go ahead and floating out there the possibility that George could be available for the offer, just to see if something crazy materialized, because we have incontrovertible proof that the folks running these teams are effing out of their minds.
Right.
So if somebody wanted to make an unbelievable, crazy offer, why not see if that comes out? But the right thing to do for the Pacers is exactly what you said at the outset of this, which is just sit tight until the lottery and see what the picks actually turn into for the teams that have picks as assets.
Kevin, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I got the impression that the Paul George trial balloon stuff was more of an ownership thing, and Larry Bird was more like, no effing way.
I think for them, I mean, it's similar to what Joe just said. Wait to see if someone blows them away, because at this point, right, there's no reason to rush into a deal, right? Because I think teams might feel the same way about Paul George, as Bill mentioned earlier. I look at George and I'm like, how does this guy not score 28 points per game? And I think the key thing is because he doesn't get to the free throw line. He can shoot from outside, he can create his own shot, but the one thing he can't do at a super high level is draw fouls at will. He can't get to the rack, and that's what the key ingredient for a lot of superstars. And maybe that's something he just needs to commit himself to, but he hasn't shown it through over the course of his career, except for like short flashes where he like opens up the year a couple years ago, like averaging 29 a game. Like that's where we saw the Paul George I think everybody thinks of. But all he's really shown over the course of his career is like he's a 23 point per game guy, which isn't what you would deal the number 1 pick and the number 4 pick and future assets for. So he's like you said, Chris, an A- right now when you want that A+ if you're dealing all that.
I mean, I wouldn't have traded. And look, I'm not a homer with trades. Like I'm pretty. I would say I'm almost tough on evaluating the Celtics' own assets, but I wouldn't have traded the Brooklyn pick and Jaylen Brown for him. I would have traded the Brooklyn pick and Jay Crowder, because then it's like the upgrade from Jay Crowder to Paul George. I could make the finals. Like that's worth doing. And it's a 50% chance. It's
Sure.
a 46% chance I'm getting one of those top 2 anyway.
This is the problem.
The pick might be the 3rd or 4th pick.
But isn't part of the issue with the Celtics though is the ticking clock on some of the guys like Crowder?
I never buy what ticking clock is there?
in terms of having to pay them.
Yeah, but here's the thing. They're running the process simultaneously with having a top 5 team. That's the part that people forget. Like when people look at, the Lakers or Philly, or nobody's like, there's a ticking clock. It's like, oh yeah, they're building something for the next 12 years. Like the Celtics, they can do that with Jaylen Brown and this Brooklyn pick and next year's pick while they try to compete. So it's like, all right, if Crowder and Thomas leave, you're still replacing them with guys who are more talented.
Yeah, but don't you think that that's kind of the same? So what you're talking about is the same schism or same debate that's happening within like the Philly, like Sixers fan community, where it's like, at what point is enough asset accruing done? Are you done with that? And you go for a Butler or a George or a Boogie.
But when you say go for it, though, it would make sense if the price was fair. Like to pay like 200 cents on the dollar for Paul George makes no sense to me because you have the assets.
But when else are you ever going to get, like, you have to identify. Boston's different because Boston is a competitive team that's like one player away from being in the finals. So the Sixers are years away.
Maybe being in the finals.
Right. But the Sixers are never going to get
Who's going to be in the
Boogie.
finals, House?
Cleveland and Golden State.
Yeah. What is my team going to possibly do to crack Cleveland and Golden State in the finals? Like if they traded all these guys for Paul
LeBron
George,
in the knee. That's what.
Yeah,
Go crack
that's what we should
LeBron
do is get a
in the
hitman.
back of his neck.
Yeah, get a hitman.
It's really all about the order of operations for the Celtics because, like, to your point, if the Celtics were to get Paul George, they're not on Cleveland's level, and they're definitely not on Golden State's level. They're maybe not even on the Spurs level, for that matter.
Well, especially if they gave up Smart and Bradley and Crowder in the trade. Like, that's ludicrous.
So in a sense, the way I look at it is like, if they wait till summer, they can use their cap space to potentially sign a guy. If you bring in Gordon Hayward and then trade for the star afterwards, that's the best order of operations for the Celtics. Ultimately, there's no guarantees there either. It could turn out that they come up empty this offseason, and then the Celtics have a ton of young players in their roster, and then we're asking the question, should they rebuild? Should they be trading more guys away to get more? That could be the question, but I think it's all about the order of operations here for the Celtics, and they're banking on that.
And you also have to look at like just what the history of trades are for good players, right? Like, would you trade for Chris Webber, House? Googs and 3 number ones, right?
Right.
3 unprotected number ones. Kevin Love fetched Andrew Wiggins. Boogie fetched 40 cents in the dollar. Dwight Howard fetched a whole bunch of crap that actually looked good for a little while, but then turned out not to be as good. But like, for the most part, nobody's been able to get 100 cents on the dollar for a guy they were trying to trade. I can't remember
I think
any instance of it.
Teams wait too long, I think.
Yeah, they
usually
wait too long or they go too soon. Darren Williams was probably the best example of a really good haul.
Yeah.
They got Derek Favors. They end up with the 3rd pick. They got another first rounder. Like, that's about as good as you're going to do.
I liked what Denver got from Melo. That core wound up getting being really good regular season team under Carl.
But did they get one All-NBA guy for Carmelo?
No.
Yeah, it's really hard to get an All-NBA guy for an All-NBA guy.
This is what we're talking about with George, too. It's just like, even if you get an All-NBA guy, it still might not be enough. You know what I mean? Like
Denver's had a better record without Melo than Melo's had with the Knicks.
Yeah.
Like, put it this way. If the Spurs said we're ready to trade Kawhi, they never would. That'd be like, all right, Jaylen Brown, Brooklyn pick. I might even give you my next Brooklyn pick. I might just go all in because now I have one. Now I have a guy that could be the best guy in a finals. But Paul George is not.
You have the guy that makes LeBron shudder when he sees him come on the floor.
Right, but like I can't believe you're even one you would deal that deal. Like you would have to do that deal. Isn't the
Kawhi.
whole point to get Kawhi?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But my point is Paul George is not Kawhi. I actually think do you think Jimmy Butler's better than Paul George right now as an asset?
I do. My hands up.
I do too.
Yeah.
I think at the beginning of the season I would have said Paul George, but Jimmy Butler's made strides this
I
year.
think Jimmy Butler and Isaiah would drive each other crazy
That's a kind of a thing that I agree with. I
because
think
they both do need the ball.
they're so ball dominant.
Butler needs to be convinced to stop pounding the ball. He hasn't had a reason to be convinced of that in Chicago yet.
That's how Paul George would have fit in better with the Celtics team, but I think Butler's a better player.
I agree with that.
And I actually think Butler can still get better. Whereas I'm not
I
sure
agree.
what Paul George is going to do at this point to get better unless his three-point shooting because he's not guys don't start going to the line more as they hit their late 20s. They are what they are at that point, but they can just get better shooters.
With Jimmy Butler, he's improved as a shooter too. Like over the years, he's still only like a 36% spot up 3-point shooter, and that's average. But at the same time, considering his ability to get to the line, I think he more than makes up for it in terms of that. And plus, Butler's a better defender than George too.
Yeah. One of the things I like about Butler is he'll be like, I got this guy. Oh, Isaiah Thomas. Oh, let me guard Isaiah for these last 2 minutes. Oh, I'm going to go get LeBron.
Yeah.
Like, he'll jump around and do stuff.
He
Which,
got the dog in him. That's what I like. I like Jimmy Butler.
I'm going to admit something right now.
Particularly.
There's like a 7-minute stretch yesterday when I thought Jimmy Butler was happening. When the Bulls made that weird Cameron Payne trade.
Yeah, that's what I thought that was about.
Rebuild, reboot, blow up.
I was thinking that the Paul George stuff was just all a sideshow. That was just a distraction from what was actually happening with Jimmy Butler.
Yeah.
It's kind of conspiracy theory, partially, sourced a little bit too. But I think that Butler was actually the real target there.
It was like when Tate was in college. Tate, when did you get your girlfriend? When did you start dating your girlfriend?
3 years ago, 4 years ago.
Before he met his girlfriend, when Tate liked a girl and he would go talk to another girl to make the first girl jealous. He told me he used to do that all the time.
It's common technique.
No, but that's what the Celts did. They're like, we're gonna go over here and talk to Paul George. Paul George, can I get you a drink? And Chicago was like, what? Who? They're talking to Paul George. What's going on here? That didn't work.
I think when the thing I'll take away from this deadline is just like, we look at these things and we look at them in vacuums, we put them in the trade machine and we have these arguments, but then you get into the actual personalities of the people running these teams and like logic kind of goes out the window.
Well, and everyone's more attached to their person. In the Michael Lewis book, there's this great chapter about Daryl Morey, the new Michael Lewis book. And one of the pieces is about when you get too attached to your own players and stripping away like the attachment to just looking at it logically. So it was about like the Kyle Lowry trade, which they were going to trade him for this really nice lottery protected pick, and they were afraid to trade him. And then they flipped it around, and somebody in the room said, well, if we had that pick, would we trade it for Kyle Lowry? And everybody in the room was like, no way, we'd keep the pick. And then they were like, well, why wouldn't we do this trade? And it was just like they flipped it around. And that exercise, I wonder if that would happen sometimes. Like if the Bulls had Jaylen Brown in the Brooklyn pick, they wouldn't trade it for Jimmy Butler because they're not going anywhere anyway. But if they'd flipped it around correctly, I would have done that too.
I'm fascinated by like the different philosophies each team has when it comes to decision making, because I think I kind of wrote about this earlier this week with the Bulls. I think from what I've heard, there's disagreement within the front office of what direction to go.
Yeah.
I hear John Paxson's the guy who kind of sees the writing on the wall that they can't build a winning product around Jimmy Butler, whereas Gar Forman and ownership is like, you know what? We're doing pretty well here. We're still in the playoffs. We get a star player. We're good. Then they like the status
Can I
quo.
tell a Gar Forman story?
Sure.
We went to do the Durant podcast 2 weeks ago, and on the way home, Gar Forman was on my flight, and this was at, I'm going to say noon, the day after the Warriors completely annihilated them as the trade deadline was getting near. And the flight was about an hour and 20 minutes, and he slept the whole time. And I was like, it all makes sense.
Don't they have?
He wasn't on.
You thought he should be on the emergency plane phone?
I thought it should be at Go Air. What's the 30-minute internet? Go Air, like on the trade machine, just coming up with ideas. No, long nap for Gar.
Do you think GMs need the trade
I
machine?
swear to God that happened. What?
Did GMs use the trade machine?
I think they do.
Absolutely.
I think Magic's going to
I
need
hope
it.
not.
Magic's like, I got to understand the CBA. I got to take a crash course. It's like, it's not hard.
He's
There's a
scrolling
salary
through the
cap.
Larry Kuhn FAQ. Like, Well, that's the pick swaps, huh?
Magic's wife's like, do you want to go see John Wick 2 today? And Magic's going, I can't. I'm on page 25 of the Larry Kuhn fact. House.
Yes.
You root for one of the worst GMs in the league, Ernie Grunfeld.
Are we sure about that?
And yet he's done an okay job the last couple years. Do you want to apologize to Ernie?
Well, first of all, I don't root for the GM. I root for a team that happens to have a GM, the longest tenured GM without a title on his resume. So congratulations for that longevity. I have absolutely no problem, and I've said it in each instance lately, where the team has flipped picks into sort of veteran talent because they have to do something to build around the two young kids, Beal and Wall, to let them realize their full potential. So no complaints whatsoever with flipping the one pick in 2017 for Bogbo. As long as Bogbo comes and continues to shoot well.
What's going on right
the
now?
Almost Bullets still need a backup point guard, because I don't know if you guys have watched Trey Burks at all.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe he's not in the D League. I mean, it's really hard to believe when he's still in the NBA. I'm fine with the B- move that EG made here.
It's even harder to believe that once upon a time I criticized the Trey Burke draft day trade where they got didn't they get 2 first rounders for him?
Something around along
Shabazz and Dang.
That's why it's so hard to judge trades like the second they happen, especially
I
the
thought
draft.
Trey Burke was going to be good. Something happened to him. I think guys lose their confidence sometimes. He's a completely different player than he was in college.
We've talked about this before about college heroes who then are forced into role player positions, and it's really difficult.
They can't
for them.
do it.
He was awesome in Michigan, but
And for point guards, it's hard for them to transition to the NBA sometimes too. I mean, look at Chris Dunn this year; he looks terrible.
Right.
But 5 years from now, I mean, we'll see how he looks. It just takes a long time for guards to develop. If Trey Burke just flat out doesn't look good, though, anyway.
Right. And if Chris Dunn was good this year, that's somebody that Sacramento might have jumped on Dunn in a lottery pick, and the Pekovic contract for Boogie is a better trade than what they got from New Orleans. But Chris Dunn's been so bad, you can't.
And Vivek just loved Buddy Hield anyway, and I think that was the difficulty for Vlade Divac is just finding a deal that could surpass the Hield offer in Vivek's mind, and I think that's why they're asking for outrageous offers.
the Hield
That's the funniest thing I heard this week.
At the same time, aren't we all rooting for Buddy Hield to be really good and for
I
the
like-
Kings
I like
for
Buddy.
the Kings to have a renaissance and for Vivek to be vindicated? I think would be one of the most fun outcomes of this season. Vivek knew all along. He saw something in Buddy Hield nobody else saw.
I mean, you know what? Jaeger has done a lot with a little. He even worked some miracles last year, and I just it might take the Pelicans a little while to figure out how to play Boogie and AD together. They also have a pretty poor roster. I was watching them last night. That was not encouraging. But I know it's the first game.
Yeah.
It's just when you see who they bring out there, you're like Tim Frazier. Okay.
I had a mailbag question about whether New Orleans had a puncher's chance against Golden State because they're two big guys. It was that's fine. Those guys could get 70 points and 40 rebounds every playoff game. The rest of their lineup is going to get completely annihilated. It's one of the biggest. Their perimeter guys versus Golden State's perimeter guys is one of the biggest mismatches.
They just signed Jared Jack.
Oh, they just signed Jared Jack, House.
He's alive?
He's alive. House, remember in college when we played with Al Sabloni and he would get mad when he didn't get the ball?
Yeah, Big Al shouldn't have gotten the ball more than he did.
No, he got the ball
exactly the right amount.
Right, but we all liked him. He would fly off the handle, but we were, it was fine. I think Boogie was the kind of negative version of that. I think he was
got
just
the ball every time he needed it.
I know,
there was
but
no problem getting.
But remember, Al would yell at me if I didn't pass it to him. I think that Boogie did all that stuff, on and off the court, and I think it wore those guys down. And now I think the Kings are probably this is great. They're just walking around oh man.
They just waited too long to do it.
With all of that, if you have that knowledge, though, if you know that's the situation, as you approach the season, it's October, why aren't you doing something then when you still have a modicum of leverage? Like,
Yeah.
what is the point? The only logic I can come up with for the Kings' disaster, the utter catastrophe that they've perpetrated upon their fan base, is they wanted to see whether or not they had a legit shot at making the playoffs this year. That's the only rational explanation for why you would go 50 games with Boogie and then run yourself directly into the trade deadline, knowing all along that there's no way you're going to hold on to him into the summer and risk, that extension negotiation.
You know what I
and
heard,
risk
though?
not getting anything for him.
I'm sure you've heard this, and I think a couple of people have written about it. It really does seem like there was like a 24-hour window where they finally broke Vivek down, and Vivek's like,
Yeah.
all right, fine. Try to see what you can get. And Vlad was just like, I'm making who and just was like gonna make the deal before he changed his mind.
Yeah. I literally think that's the case.
It's like when you go to buy a car and you go in and they don't want to let you leave until you commit to buying the car. That's what Vlad was like. He was probably mobilized. Everyone, we have 7 hours. Vivek's gonna change. He's gonna wake up soon from his nap.
There's
we
also
gotta do this now.
all these things where it's like you just wonder what else was happening. And that's what I'm so fascinated by with the Okafor Noel situation. It's just like, what did they? Colangelo came out today and said that this was the best deal available that he could make at the time being, and that basically, I mean, the understanding being that they had no interest in getting into the restricted free agent game with Noel, but like. This is just so mind-boggling how we wound up not having the clearly better NBA player on our team. Honestly, also, and people have been talking about this all day, there's no guarantee that Embiid's going to be able to play more than 45, 50 games a season. So Noel's pretty good Embiid insurance.
45 is high.
Yeah.
You could have said 20 there, and I would have nodded.
Right. So,
Chris, I have a question for you, though. Why wouldn't they enter the summer and get into the RFA period with Noel? Why not?
Great question.
I have no idea. I
Are they
don't. I don't.
anywhere
I just
near the
don't think
cap?
Colangelo liked him.
Yeah.
I just don't think
Well,
he.
the feeling's mutual.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
They-
what are the
And the
Sixers?
Philly fan base pays the price.
He's going to go nuts in
Thank
Dallas.
you, Brian.
He's going to be so good on Dallas.
I was dying for the Celtics to get him.
for the season.
You could have told me that not only did he vote for Trump, but he had a Trump bumper sticker on his Jeep and was going to rallies and the whole thing and did all this offense. I would have been like, can you
You mean
do a
like Tom
screen roll?
Brady? Just like Tom Brady?
That's fine. I deserve that. But I just think he's going to be really good on the right team. I could see him being. I agree with you. I could see him being awesome on Dallas.
It's a great fit.
The thing with Noel that when you watch him, and it was just like clearly he's just on the wrong team, but like so good at screen and rolls, so active around the rim, like
Awesome
not
in
just protecting
transition.
the rim, but like flying out, and
Yeah.
deflecting balls and all this stuff. Great on transition. I just wanted to see him on a good team, and I kept watching him, thinking like, man, him and Isaiah Thomas on the high screen. I would get a boner. I'm not kidding.
I understand.
Not like a full one, but like a half
I hate the
one.
Celtics, but I understand that boner.
Yeah. And now he's on Dallas. He's going to do it with Yogi Ferrell,
I know.
who might be good. Where'd you have Yogi Ferrell, O'Connor?
Probably like 40, 50, something like that. Like borderline undrafted. So, I mean, that's kind of what happened with him.
You didn't think he was going to be an all-NBA point guard?
Oh, hell no. I don't think Yogi Ferrell thought he was going to be an all-NBA point guard.
Tate's really upset about this.
What?
Tate hates Indiana. It's the only thing worse would be if
I
it was
think
from
with
Duke.
Nerlens Noel, right? I think Colangelo should have made a deal before the season. They could have done better then, but I think with Noel, like, would you really want to pay him like close to a max contract with his injury history and little rumblings about his party habits?
Yeah, I mean-
you should have
Whoa.
taken it to RFA, to the restricted free agency. I agree, but maybe there is the other side of it where they're like, what, let's just do this now, which they should have done before the season, to allow more playing time for the other guys in their team. That was the whole point of doing it before the year.
Yeah.
Get guys like Rashawn Holmes playing time because he's a good player, and I think he could become like a contributor to that team. And now they open up that time, but it's still a bad deal.
And we still have Okafor.
Yeah, which is ridiculous. They should have traded him
Yeah,
before
Kev.
the year too.
The problem I have with what you just described is who is playing backup for Embiid? They have to have a replacement level, above replacement level backup
You guys
for,
are missing.
Joel.
You're missing a key part of this. One of the reasons they traded Noel now is to make the team worse.
Yes, I know. I'm
So-
aware. I'm aware
Yeah,
of
okay.
what he's doing.
Yeah.
And I'm aware that he is trying I'm aware that Colangelo is essentially doing what Hinkie would have done, but trying to make it sound like it was in the best short-term interest of the team as well. He's like, oh, now Dario gets like a more we got rid of Ilyasova so that Dario has like a more focus. He wanted to get rid of Okafor. I just feel like this just reeks of like waiting too long and getting screwed by not having any options. And I do think that he wanted to get involved in a three-way for Butler for Boston, and he just when that collapsed, he had nothing else to do.
Would you have traded him for Terry Rozier, Minnesota's 32nd round pick, which would be like 35, 36 in this year's draft that Boston has, and a conditional 2018 first round pick that's top 22 protected versus the deal you got?
No.
What if I gave you the 2018 first?
Unprotected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Boston one.
I guess so.
Terry Rozier in the 2018 first.
I honestly couldn't tell you like what Terry Rozier does on any given night.
Isn't that more than what Dallas offered?
Yeah, definitely.
It just comes down
The
to
top
Justin
18
Anderson
protected
versus
pick.
Terry Rozier.
Yeah, I guess
right?
is it Justin Anderson?
Because the Dallas, that's not going to be. They're not going to get that pick. It's going to be 2 second rounds.
I know. That's what.
Yeah.
That's also offensive that they came out and even bothered to try and sell it as a first round pick.
Colangelo called it draft compensation today.
Yeah,
So
this is just like
now,
this-
they probably read the bash.
I'm back to bullshit city. This is like
Yeah.
I preferred Hinkie not talking and then talking about like birds and Warren Buffett than having Colangelo give it like every 3-month update where it's just like we're just gonna no. It's like I'd rather have the eccentricity than have this.
House, this will cheer you up. You spent a lot of money on expensive takeout, I know.
I do it.
You could just sign up with Blue Apron.
Oh,
I keep telling you to do that. For less than $10 per meal, Blue Apron will deliver you all the fresh ingredients you need for a delicious home-cooked meal. They have the highest standards for ingredients. They built a community of home chefs that has no rival. Here's some of the meals available in February
ooh, that's my favorite part.
on Blue Apron. I know. I really love doing the Blue Apron reads with you. Here's some of the meals, House. Cashew chicken stir fry with tango mandarins and jasmine rice.
Oh, wonderful.
Udon noodle soup with miso and soft-boiled eggs. No?
Yes, udon.
Yeah, you like udon noodle soup.
I love udon.
Roasted pork with apple, walnut, and farro salad. You definitely eat that. I've seen you eat pork. Crispy barramundi with quinoa and roasted carrot salad. A little healthy for you, but you'd eat it anyway because you love food.
Keep going. Don't stop.
That's all I have right now.
Oh.
You can get your first 3 Blue Apron meals for free with free shipping if you go to blueapron.com/BS. What was your favorite out of those 4, House? Cashew chicken stir fry?
Yes, you know why? Because I would have said udon, but it's 75 degrees here on the East Coast now, so I'm ready for spring.
All right. Blueapron.com/BS. First 3 Blue Apron meals for free with free shipping. What else can we talk about with the trade deadline?
You want to talk about the Thunder?
Yeah.
Dougie McBuckets,
Oh,
Taj Gibson.
man, I got to do it. It's become a BS podcast cliche at this point. Are we sure Doug McDermott's good?
He doesn't do a lot else other than
What does
shoot.
he do?
He can shoot the lights
He
out.
shoots.
I think that can help Russell Westbrook for sure. I mean, he might hurt them on the defensive end, but who cares if he's shooting like 45% on spot up, wide
he's
open spot
Anthony Morrow.
up threes. He could be Anthony Morrow.
But Anthony Morrow wasn't making shots. Tate and I saw them in person 2 weeks ago, and on the way home had the "what the hell does Doug McDermott do" conversation, because it just seemed like the Warriors just had somebody stand next to him, and that was it. He was completely out of the offense.
How about the Bulls trading 2 first-round draft picks for him a couple years ago?
Ooh.
That's a bad deal.
It ended up being Nurkic and Gary Harris,
Yeah.
right?
Who are Nurkic isn't great right now, but Gary Harris is
Gary
a better
Harris.
player than Doug McDermott.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
there were other guys that could have even taken it 11
Oh, yeah.
too in the McDermott spot.
Definitely.
That's
I
a
mean,
botch.
Bad deal.
That was a botch.
One of the many bad deals the Bulls have made.
It is possible though that all the Bulls, like how long did we hear that Mirotic was supposedly this unbelievable guy?
Yeah, and also
And now they couldn't even give him away.
I
at the
think
trade
that's
deadline.
part more of an indictment of like what's happening in Chicago. That like so many of these
Like
guys
Bulls
that have
media?
potential. No, not even media. Just like because isn't Mirotic involved in all the Rondo, Butler, Wade infighting? It's like that those guys like Butler and Wade don't like Mirotic, but like
Yeah.
Rondo does.
When we saw him in person 2 weeks ago, I was riveted by how unhappy he seemed.
Yeah.
I couldn't stop watching it, actually.
Should have drafted Rodney Hood.
Oh, that could have Rodney Hood with the in that McDermott draft.
Yeah.
But yeah. So for OKC, Taj, that's good. Taj is good. That's gonna help. Even if it was just Taj for Cameron Payne. The thing with Payne, who I think might end up being good, I'm actually a believer. That it couldn't have been a worse team for him. You have a guy who's a point guard, who's a distributor, and needs the ball in his hands. He's playing with Russell Westbrook, with the all-time one-man show we've had. You know, like, what was he going to do? He can't play with Westbrook.
I think the thing with Payne is, like, even if he becomes a good point guard, which I think he will, I like Payne, he could still be the 25th best point guard in the NBA. Right. I don't know if he has that star potential. I think he's like one of those guys who you're happy to have on your roster, good starter, but he's not the guy. I think the Bulls, I mean, if they were to trade Butler in this draft, they should still target a point guard, I think, in this year.
Right. It's a loaded draft. House, we did this exercise, O'Connor and I, the other day in the office, trying to figure out, because the Pelicans are obviously going to overpay Drew Holiday, and it's going to be a mistake. I'm just telling you right now. It's mid-February. It's already a bad move. I'm already giving them an F- for it, and it's 4 months away from happening. And we're trying to figure out, is he in the bottom third of point guards you want? So we went through all the rosters. We'd be like, you know, Boston would rather have Isaiah Thomas. Like Cleveland would rather have Kyrie. Go all down the line. What do we have him ranked? 21st or 22nd?
Something like that. I think it was 22.
22.
Like maybe it's 22 and a half because we had a couple disagreements in there.
Yeah, it was somewhere between 21 and 23 where we had Drew Holiday ranked on the starting point guard, who would you rather have list.
And he's going to get paid over $20 million.
Yeah, at that point, I would just rather roll the dice with the Yogi, hoping for next year's Yogi Ferrell. They're going like stopgap dudes or whatever.
That's the inherent problem with the Pelicans too, because once they pay Drew Holiday, they lose cap flexibility, and it's going to be very difficult for them to add good players to that roster that can contribute, and they need more, right? That Boogie, Davis, Holiday is a nice core, but they need more than that.
So it seems like what we're getting into now is that last year this time there was no cap. Like there was no such thing as bad deals. We're just going to throw this money at people. We have to we have to make up all these numbers. And now all of a sudden I feel like I'm hearing more and more like that's a bad deal. This guy's expiring. Like
because the cap's not going up.
It's going to level out, right? Yeah. But like that's, to me, Drew Holiday has saved the Pelican season. Like he seems like he's like a really good point guard when he's healthy. And I probably would have him higher than where you guys have him. But I understand what you're saying. He's like $20 million for Drew Holiday is nuts.
We're going to have to go through the list.
The hard thing about it is if you bite down on him that way, that's your big three. And what's the ceiling for that big three?
House, I'm just having like such a hard time. Like it's like how many good what's the alternative, right? You've got AD and Boogie. Like, don't you have to kind of put as good of a supporting cast around them as possible?
You need a psychiatrist.
I agree with you, Chris. So you need those assets that you would otherwise devote exclusively to Holiday and try and come up with, turn that into two players or 2.5 players.
I see.
All right, here's the exercise. Ready?
You go running back by committee then.
Here we go.
I would.
Golden State, Curry. San Antonio, would you rather have Patty Mills at a cheap contract or Drew Holiday?
Patty Mills for cheap.
Okay, 0 for 2. Kyrie, 0 for 3. James Harden, 0 for 4. Isaiah Thomas, John Wall, Chris Paul. We're now 0 for 7 for Drew Holiday. Utah Jazz, would you rather have George Hill?
What's George Hill make?
Or Drew?
Is George Hill
free agent?
Is George Hill going to make $20 million?
Maybe like a level below that, I think, but pretty close.
I would take George Hill
Holiday's
cheaper.
not crazy for Utah. That's the right kind of situation to me, right? He could really help that team get over.
All right, so let's give it to him.
They're
Fine.
trying
All
to
right,
get
that's
to
first
the,
one.
Yeah.
So there's one. Mike Conley, no. Kyle Lowry, no. Dennis Schroeder at a cheap price, or Drew Holiday for $20 million a year?
Absolutely Drew Holiday.
I agree with
I'd rather Holiday as well.
Okay,
I'm not
so
a
there's
shooter
two.
guy.
Russell Westbrook, Jeff Teague.
Push.
I'd rather Holiday.
I would rather Holiday also,
And Teague's
but
gonna be a
it's
free agent.
impossible
Let's get
to
to
know
him.
what the
There's
Pacers
three.
are going to look like.
Chicago Bulls, yes, there's 4. Detroit Pistons,
Drew Holiday.
5. Giannis,
That's not fair.
he's a point guard. Jamal Murray and Moutier or Drew Holiday?
Drew Holiday.
for $20 million, or would you rather have the
I'd
upside
rather
of
have
the
the
kids?
Denver guys. House, you're the tiebreaker.
Me too. I'd rather have the Denver guys.
Okay. Dragic?
That's a split.
How much is Dragic?
He's like
17, 18,
Yeah.
and he has like another year left.
I'd rather have Dragic.
Okay.
Same.
Sacramento.
Ty Lawson.
Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday is exactly the kind of player that
So that's
Sacramento's
7
had.
teams. Damian Lillard, Kemba Walker.
Drew Holiday.
No and no. Oh,
Whoa.
take rather have Drew Holiday than Kemba Walker. He made the All-Star
Really?
team.
Do you think that
Get
the
outta here,
Hornets
Tate.
would be
We're
better
not
with
listening to
Drew
you.
Holiday than they are with Kemba
Stop
Walker?
it, Tate.
Yeah.
Don't listen to
No
Tate.
way.
He's got an irrational
That's
Kemba.
rude.
40 times a game.
Stop it. Knicks, yes. So there's 8. Would you rather have him or Yogi Ferrell and Seth Curry?
I'd rather
like-
have Holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd rather spend $20 million for Drew Holiday than $1 million on Yogi Ferrell and Seth Curry.
That makes Dallas really interesting, right?
Yeah.
All right, I'll
I'm-
give it to you guys. I
Is
don't agree
Dallas
with it.
using their money on something else? Like, if I visit, who's like the guy who's getting paid on Dallas?
Minnesota?
Drew Holiday.
I think I'd rather have
I
the
agree.
combo of the youth. I mean, if it's one guy, like if it's Holiday over Rubio, I take Holiday. But if you're also throwing Dunn in there, like Dunn and Rubio,
Dunn.
I'd rather Dunn and Rubio.
I would too. I'd rather have done in Rubio.
Okay.
Okay, me too. I'm agreeing with Kevin.
Philly?
Drew Holiday.
Bring him back.
How about TJ McConnell, Chris? He's
Orlando?
the greatest point guard all time.
We're just. I'm not. I go ahead.
Orlando, Drew Holiday. Lakers, I'd rather have Russell.
I'd rather have the youth.
Me
Phoenix,
too, Russell.
Bledsoe. In Brooklyn, you'd rather have Drew Holiday. So that's more teams than when we did it
Yeah.
last time. So now we
so-
have him ranked like 19.
Yeah, still that's not great though.
No, that means
that's
he's
still,
never
I
gonna
think that
be an
I'm
all-star
bringing
team
a
ever.
little bit too much Doug Collins to this podcast. Maybe I influenced you guys.
Drew's a gamer.
the other factor here though.
I've been
Is,
in some wars with Drew.
the other factor though is there's like a bajillion point guards coming in this draft. So and some
See,
of those
that's the
guys
thing,
are going to
that-
become stars.
But that's my point. Like, if he is not one of the best 12 to 13 point guards in the league, I would just rather roll the dice with what's out there and maybe get a draft pick or something, or another free agent, or get somebody in the cheap.
I think Drew
there's a
Holiday's-
point guard surplus.
There is a point guard surplus, but I think that Drew Holiday getting 20 mil is not the most egregious person getting overpaid in the NBA right now. And I don't really, I mean, I just wish that they would stick to a cap so that we could get accrue like a fixed value of players.
All right, for the record, Drew Holiday's last 4 seasons: 34 games, 40 games, 65 games, and playing a full year this year. He is basically 15.
He missed the first part of the season.
He's 15 and 7 every game. He's a okay 3-point shooter, not great. He's around 37, 38%. He does not really get to the free throw line. He does not rebound at an above average rate. I don't know. I don't see it. I would not want to pay him $20 million. I don't want to pay $20 million for somebody who's not an all-star.
He's
Are
an
you sure
excellent defender though.
he's gonna get that kind of
Huh?
money?
He's an excellent defender though.
Okay.
So I mean that's something that's hard to look at with the stats.
Fair point.
I think Holiday. Look, the Pelicans are in a spot they have to pay him. I mean you can't let Drew Holiday walk because they don't have any
Why?
alternatives.
They don't have. Who are
Who
they gonna
signed
get?
him? Well, but the Celtics are in this conundrum, right? A little bit because people are like, oh, they overpaid Al Horford. Al Horford does a lot of good things at a really high level. And the stats, I don't think, totally reflect all the stuff he does. Maybe Drew Holiday, maybe the defensive stats.
Well, I think that's why if you're the Pelicans, you're better off. You're in a spot where you have to re-sign Holiday because you don't have alternatives. And then if you do miss the playoffs and you get lucky, you win the lottery, and you somehow manage to keep your pick, you get another top player too. Whereas if you do make the playoffs, you get no chance, and the drop falls off after the top 10 guys because they need more, and they don't have the cap flexibility to add more through free agency, and they probably don't have the asset flexibility to do it through trade. So the best case scenario is for the Pelicans to somehow get lucky in the lottery and manage to add another guy that they need because that's their only path to getting him.
That would only be if the league rigged the lottery. Like
Yes.
they did for Derrick Rose that year.
Yeah, to save basketball in New Orleans.
What's the over-under for rigged lotteries, do you think? Like
3?
7.5?
Oh yeah, you're higher than me.
Yeah. I'm always suspicious of the lottery. No, I don't think they rig it.
I think that this is like a really,
Not really,
it's a
totally.
deeply philosophical question.
Yeah.
What, like, we just spent the first part of this podcast talking about how Brandon Ingram isn't that good, but like last year at this time, everybody was freaking out of Brandon Ingram. And it's like, I was under the impression that Brandon Ingram was going to come into the league and set it on fire, based on the way that we were talking about it. Is even if you got Fultz, is that a better option for the current Pelicans than...
Well, that's a totally different level of guy, though.
Okay, but is Fultz coming into the league next year?
Ingram wasn't even remotely a sure thing.
None of these guys are going to come in next year and light it up. I
Right.
don't think. I mean, I think for the Pelicans, right?
Lonzo's dad is furious right now.
Okay, yeah. Okay, sorry, LeVar. But I think for the Pelicans, it's like they can't go all in right now because they don't have the flexibility. So in a sense, they need to manage and have this good team, this 500 team, and then have that young star player that comes up. They wanted that to be Buddy Hield, and obviously they got him for a star. But if they get another guy somehow, being able to get lucky in the lottery and keep that pick, that's the guy in 3 years when it comes time where Davis's contract is coming up, where you already have Boogie locked up, where then it's like, okay, now we're looking good. We have our big three. It could be, it could be Fultz. It could be Lonzo Ball. Or it could be one of the forwards, too, for that matter.
Or trade Boogie this summer. Flip the asset.
That'd be sneaky.
To the Wizards. House, you still awake?
Still in play. I mean, some of you on the pod earlier this week, I think with Verno, talked about Beal you were just running through each team and saying whether or not teams would do deals. I would have done Beal for Boogie. I would have done that immediately, and I would have done it straight up. No hesitation.
Well, because House is worried about his legs.
That's fair, but at the same time,
House has had enough of stress fractures with Bradley Beal.
but then
in
you'd
the
be
same
worried
sentence.
about Boogie's personality once you have
Well,
him
he's
on
got
your
John
own team.
Wall.
Boogie and Wall
Yeah.
and Scotty Brooks. That's a love affair.
House's 180 on Scotty Brooks has been one of the highlights of my
Look,
NBA
Scott Brooks
season.
made Kelly Oubre into a real thing. That guy should get Coach of the Year.
And Otto Porter.
Otto Porter's
It's
going to get a
not my
max.
180, by the way. I had an open mind. You're the one.
Yeah.
And before the season started, I gave the Washington professional basketball team the benefit of the doubt at exceeding the
You did.
over-under and exceeding the Randy Whitman,
You did.
ceiling. And here we are.
You did. You don't think Fultz could come in and be good right away?
I mean, he could contribute, but you mean making a super big winning impact where you're putting him out there at the end of the fourth quarter? I think he can contribute, but I don't know if he'll be a guy where he's really making a big difference, at end of game situations, which is really when it matters.
I'm so impressed by how he can get his shot off.
He's
I
good.
feel like he can do that at any level.
My thing with him is his shot for real. I don't think he's as good as 42, 43%, whatever he is from three. I think he's a good shooter. I don't think he's this great shooter that he is right now. And we get tricked by that all the time with these small samples in college where guys play only 30 games. Right. And 5 shots can make the difference between 36% and 42%. So I like Fultz, but I don't think he's a great shooter like he looks like he's been.
You like him, Chris?
I love Fultz.
He's awesome.
What do you think, House?
I love him too, but to Kevin's point, the three-point line is also 7 feet shorter in college, so it's not really a good indication. He's a good mid-range jumper, is what that means in the NBA.
Least surprising headline on a major sports website right now. Sixers rookie Simmons won't play this season.
Yeah, that's a shock.
It's
They
too
got to
bad.
get some better MRI machines in
shouldn't play.
Philadelphia. I feel like they have a couple too many. Oh wait, the scan's different now.
Be a little more honest with the injury timelines too.
Yeah,
House, if I did the trade value column, where would you put Simmons, just out of curiosity?
Top. How many? How long? How
Let's say
many
it was
guys
a
are we going to
top-
put in the column this year?
Let's say it was a top 60.
60. I'd put him in, 55, 56, something like that. He's inside of it.
All right. Chad Ford just put up his mock draft 3.0. Fultz 1, Lonzo 2, Josh Jackson 3. No surprises there. Malik Monk,
That's your
number
guy.
4.
I'm in love with Malik Monk.
He's
Philadelphia.
your guy.
I'm in love with.
Philadelphia.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dennis Smith 5.
Ugh, not a fan.
Not a fan either. Jonathan Isaac 6. Jason Tatum 7 to the Sacramento Kings.
Perfect.
Tate's delighted about that. Frank Ntilikina to the Knicks. Ntilikina? How do you say it?
I think it's
Ntilikina?
Ntilikina or Tilikina.
Ntilikina.
One of those two.
So the
Not
Knicks-
sure if the N is silent.
The Knicks taking a French guy. I'm sure that'll go great. Laurie Markkinen, number 9 to Dallas. We all like him.
I'm a big fan.
All of us
him
like
a lot.
Markkinen.
Yeah.
It's a good one. Also sounds like the Die Hard 7
Yeah.
villain.
Yeah.
Like Laurie Markkinen has
Lost-
killed John
the Lost
McClane's
Gruber
family.
brother.
Yeah. De'Aaron Fox, 10 to Sacramento.
Can't shoot.
Also perfect.
Can't shoot. Where would you guys rank Ben Simmons in this draft? Where would you take him?
Harry Giles, 11.
I put Ben Simmons in the top 3.
There is no effing way
Where
Harry
would you
Giles
put him?
goes 11.
I think maybe 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Kevin,
pretty
what are,
close.
what are the odds Harry Giles goes in the top 11? I'm going to go with 0.
I think if there's a team where they're thinking to themselves, like, we hate everybody after this top group, then maybe you take a shot
So he's
at
the
him.
Thon maker of this year's draft?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I think my question with Harry Giles is he as like when he was the number 1 high school recruit, was he as like spectacular as we all thought he was? Because I mean, he's not a good shooter from the outside, and we know how valuable that is with big men in today's NBA. Not a good free throw shooter. So it's like good defender, can protect the rim, can switch pick and rolls, and he's athletic. And he can pass the ball a little bit too, but at the same time, it's like shooting is really, really, really important for big men in today's NBA. And he hasn't had that skill, and he hasn't flashed it yet.
Who are
either.
you in love with right now? If you could
Tate, Bam's not in Chad's top 30.
That's just
House, do you like Bam in Kentucky?
Incomplete. I've only seen flashes, and
Tate
I
and
haven't
I like
sat down
Bam.
and
We're
started
in the
studying college
bandwagon.
basketball yet.
yeah.
Tate and I are in the top 2 in the Bam bandwagon.
You guys should watch Justin Patton from Creighton. I like him a lot.
Okay.
Really raw, big man. Can do a lot of things well. Can shoot the ball.
Kevin
Good
loved
defense.
Brogdon last year.
Yeah, I'm high on Brogdon.
Give me a couple other sleepers to check out.
I talked to Brogdon at the combine last year, and
You did?
You know, it's like, how are you not ranked in top 25 for everybody? And he's like, I don't know either. I'm going to come in right away and make an impact. Because he's like, I know my role, I know what I'm good at. I'm not going to step outside of that. And that's exactly what we've seen. But other sleepers this year,
Yeah.
I mean, I still love OG Anunoby from Indiana. And if he were to come out, despite the torn ACL, like, he's a guy I'd gamble on in, like, the middle of the first round, despite that. Because, look, I mean, I have a type where I always fall in love with these forwards who are super athletic and can defend but can't shoot.
Yeah.
And Anunoby kind of falls into that
like, 'cause
category.
you think you can teach him to shoot? Well, the teams can teach him to shoot.
Yeah, I just think
Yeah.
everything you hear about him is he's a good kid, like a hard worker. So those are 2 perfect ingredients for someone to improve their shot. But at the same time, not every team has a shooting coach.
How
So
are you
it's-
feeling about Lonzo right now?
I'm loving Lonzo,
Okay.
man. I think his basketball IQ is just
Lonzo.
unbelievable. The only flaw is his dad and how he talks him up as the next better than Stephen Curry.
Would you take Lonzo or Fultz if you were the Celtics and you got the number 1 pick?
If I were the Celtics, I think I'd rather Fultz, just because I think his ability to I just think he's more versatile on both ends of the floor. I think you can use him in either role, whereas Lonzo Ball, I mean, in both situations, though, really, how does that impact Isaiah Thomas? Like, would he be happy with, like, a team drafting a
I
point
think
guard?
Lonzo makes more sense for the Celtics if
'Cause he
you're
can
going to
shoot.
build around Isaiah.
Better shooter?
Well, better shooter, but also can go anywhere. You just tell him to do whatever. Lonzo, go over
I have
there.
a question.
Lonzo, handle the ball. Lonzo, play small forward. Like, he'll do anything. What was your question, House?
I have a question for Kevin about Lonzo's shooting stroke, and I'm going to make a ridiculous analogy here. I'm curious about it. It feels like it might be really susceptible to being defended at the NBA in a way that college can't defend it. And the stupid analogy is, I think about dumb Tim Tebow's throwing motion and how long it took him to throw a pass in the NFL, and why that ultimately defeated his success. And I worry about Lonzo with that pocket, that shoulder pocket shooting style, and whether he can be sort of groomed out of that.
So with Lonzo Ball, like we talked about earlier with Fultz, I don't think Fultz is actually like a 42% 3-point shooter.
Yeah.
I kind of feel the same way about Lonzo Ball. But with that said, I feel really good about Lonzo Ball being like a great shooter off the catch. I think despite his weird, funky mechanics, that slingshot, I think he'll be a good shooter off the catch. My concern, and this is kind of like where I have my hang up with him, is I don't think he can create his shot off the dribble with those weird mechanics.
Right.
Like, you watch him,
I agree.
he has this weird, like, look closely, like next time you watch him play, when he pulls up from mid-range or 3, there's this weird pause. Like as he stops his
hitch.
dribble,
I
as he stops his
agree.
dribble, he adjusts the ball on his hands and like he doesn't go straight up in his shot. And that's what like separates the Steve Nashes and the Stephen Currys of the world. Like they can create their dribble and create space, but they also just fire straight into their shot. And Ball
I
isn't at that
agree.
level.
Let's ask Ball's dad for his comments. Don't you dare talk about my son like that, Kevin.
Just make a little.
He's the best player since Steph Curry.
Just to make a little tweak, LeVar, to your son's mechanics, and he'll be great.
Yeah, I love Lonzo.
Yeah, he's so fun.
I just think when your IQ is that high on a basketball court, you're going to be fine. He'll figure it out.
Figure it out, and that's what
He
happened
might
with
be
Brogdon.
like a genius.
That's what happened with Malcolm Brogdon.
I don't know if Brogdon's a genius.
He's pretty smart. They call him the president for a reason. They call.
But he might be a genius, like he might be running his own company someday.
I think he.
Lonzo's like a hoop savant.
Yeah. I think Brogdon. I mean, we're comparing like a second round pick to a top 3 pick,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think in terms of b-ball IQ, I think like those guys tend to figure it out at some level.
So NBA Finals odds: Warriors minus 220, Cavs plus 360. San Antonio, what do you think their odds are, House?
Plus 525.
10 to
like
1.
That. 5 to 1.
10 to
10
1.
to 1.
Wow.
Celtics.
10 to 1.
Celtics, your fourth best odds, 30 to 1. Houston, your fifth best odds, 40 to 1. Clippers, 50 to 1. Raptors, Wizards, 60 to 1. 60 to 1.
I don't know.
That seems high for the Wiz.
I think the Raptors and the Wizards are kind of tasty there.
I'm just glad we're in the conversation.
Yeah, so we didn't talk about Ibaka and PJ Tucker. I feel like you really have to be a diehard league pass psychopath to even have an opinion on PJ Tucker. I was waiting to see where he would go. He's the kind of guy I could see in a series going at LeBron, getting in it, like annoying him, frustrating him, starting a thing, pushing this guy. Like he's kind of perfect. And I like Ibaka on that team too. I'm really interested to see what they're going to look like. What do you think, Kevin?
I like Tucker too, especially for the price they got him.
Yeah.
I think PJ Tucker, like that's what you're getting him for. I don't think he's a good shooter. You know, he's like 35%, and he doesn't do a lot else offensively, but what he can do is switch on defense. He's versatile. He's hard-nosed on defense. He's just a great energy guy. And those
Yeah.
are important in the playoffs.
I love it. I love the two moves because I feel like it's Masai putting pressure on Cleveland. Like you can't sleep through the playoffs.
Right. We're showing up. What'd you think, House?
Yeah, I gave Toronto the highest grade for the trade deadline in my own internal rankings. And I really fear Toronto. Maybe not. They don't have enough time to win enough games to grab the 2 seed. But I think they're the most legitimate threat to Cleveland. They're now, to me, at least by roster construction, ahead of both Washington and Boston.
So the Celtics, Cleveland has 40 wins. Celtics have 37. Washington has 34. Toronto has 33. So you need to stay ahead of Toronto. You want to play the Celtics in round 2, right? I mean, that's a no-brainer.
Oh, my God, yeah.
Oh man,
And it's a bad matchup for us. Like,
that'll also just be so fun.
that'll be a great one.
Can
There's a lot of
everybody
bad
wear
blood.
all black the entire time? Like 10 guys in all black.
House, do you think that'll affect our friendship? We've never had our teams go against each other in really anything.
I don't think it'll affect our friendship.
Yeah, I don't think
you
so
still like
either.
to eat, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, we're good. We're good.
I don't think our teams have ever competed in any sport. In any playoff series that I can remember.
Well, it's because Washington's been terrible and for 30 years.
Yeah, the most fun round 2 is Cleveland versus Toronto, Boston versus Washington.
That's
It's a
awesome.
slam dunk.
That would be great.
It would
And
also
then-
be the first time in a while that second round Eastern Conference playoffs would be really exciting.
Yeah. And then on the other side, I guess, do we want to see a Warriors Clippers series at this point?
No. Not
We've
after
given
last
up on
night.
that series.
I want Rockets Warriors. Doesn't matter what round. I think the Rockets could
I
really
agree.
really give them a run for their money, especially after getting Lou Williams. I
Yeah,
love
we didn't
that.
talk about that.
I love that trade so
They have
much.
shooters all over the place. They have 2 creators when Harden's out of the lineup, and 2 just irrational confidence heat check guys, Gordon and Williams. Gordon's like rational and irrational, but Lou Williams could win a playoff game.
When is the last time a team had like the top 2 sixth men of the year candidates, 2 guys that can go off for 25 points on any night coming off their bench? Lou Williams is like one of the best pick and roll ball handler playmakers this season.
Right.
And he was playing for the Lakers.
Yeah.
Now he's playing on the floor with Eric Gordon and Ryan Anderson, and he could share minutes with James Harden.
I think if
It's crazy.
they're healthy, the Warriors are going to annihilate everybody. Like, I think this is really adorable that you guys are like the Rockets.
I think
but
Houston's going to game the math.
No.
I wrote this today. They're going to shoot 63s. They're going to hope Harden has one game where he goes for like 58 or some crazy thing and he wins. And then the other ones are just going to hope they go like 25 for 60 from 3. They shot 50 last night. Did you see that?
I did. Yeah. Against the Pelicans.
And D'Antoni said he wants to shoot 53s per game, like the rest of the season. He wants that to be their average.
If I'm the Warriors, and I know I'm going to make the finals unless something funky happens. What's funky? Funky is, oh my God, we ran into that team that shot 45% from 3 and took 63s a game. Like, we couldn't compete with the math. That's the only way they're going to lose.
Couldn't they compete with that math really easily?
They could, but they'd have to make shots, you know? I don't know.
I think what you're saying is if Golden State has one of those cold streaks, right?
Yeah.
And then Houston just happens to catch fire at that time. Like, that's just circumstantial, right?
I'm more optimistic than you are.
I'm not optimistic at all.
How many games will the Warriors beat the Rockets, and Chris?
5.
I think Hillary has this election, says Chris Ryan.
Hillary didn't have KD and
The 2016 finals is over, said Chris Ryan.
Probably could have beat Trump.
Turn the TV off. The Falcons are up 25, said Chris Ryan.
Okay.
It's the year that don't write in anything in pen.
Okay. Damien Chazelle, accepting his Oscar award, says, thanks, Bill Simmons. And
Damien
Steve Carell
Chazelle.
lifting the Larry O'Brien. It's not, but watching the Warriors over the last couple weeks, I just don't see it. It is the unsolvable problem.
I think with the Warriors, they haven't even unleashed everything they can do yet.
I agree with
where is the Durant, Stephen Curry pick and roll? They're not running that very often at all. I mean, there's little instances where they do it, but once they unleash that, how do you stop
They had
that?
a 50-point third quarter against the Clippers. I know they didn't have Chris Paul,
Crazy.
but they were absolutely inflamed last night.
If they
I don't
re-sign Bogut after he gets bought out, that would be it.
That's such a fun wrinkle.
If Bogut goes back, he's a coward. No, I don't actually mean
Undisputed.
that. Coming up next, my take.
Does Bogut have enough bravery to stay away from
You're a coward, Andrew Bogut. I wouldn't go back, but I'm spiteful. I wouldn't. I'd be like, you guys got rid of me. Now
Where
you
would
want
you
me
go
back?
if you were him?
I would go to Cleveland.
Okay, that'd be fun.
Or I would go to Houston. Would be the other one.
I think I'd go to Houston.
I don't think it was an accident that Houston just mysteriously cleared $3.3 million of buyout space on their
And
their ledger.
Maury said yesterday in like a post interview, I forget which show it was or if it was a conference call or whatever, but he said we out of all the contending teams, we have the most money we can offer. And it's like, so obviously they're going to go for somebody out there, and Bogut would be awesome for them.
And let's be honest, Andrew Bogut's Twitter feed makes a lot more sense in Texas. A lot. Right, Tate?
He's happy in Texas.
Yeah, he likes Texas.
Yeah.
He's very comfortable. Hey, we love having great advertisers support our show. But in order to keep doing that, we need your help. So please go to podsurvey.com/BS and take a quick anonymous survey that will help us get to know you a little better. I mean, the podcast is free. It's not like we're asking a lot here. That way we can show advertisers just how great our listeners are. Even if you've taken our show's podcast listeners survey before, the current one is new and different. I would love for you to take it all over again. Plus, once you've completed the survey, you can enter to win a $100 Amazon gift card. So go to podsurvey.com/BS and have your chance to win a gift card. Do it for us. Come on. I don't ask for much. All right. Any last things we got to cover on the NBA? Did we hit everything? House, did we cover everything?
It feels like we got everything covered.
Are you just saying that because you're hungry and you have to go?
I drank a lot of water at lunchtime.
Before you go, will you tell us what's going to happen with Tiger Woods in 2017? Because yet again, I have Tiger Woods blue balls.
I would get some ice. I believe they're going to stay very blue for the balance of the season. I don't have high hopes for him. He might come out and play 2 or 3 times. I don't think he's going to complete 4 rounds of golf this season. It seems like he's not physically able to do so. This latest back setback, I believe, to be much more dramatic than what he and his camp have revealed. He was not able to show up to a press conference that would benefit his own new corporation and the charity in L.A. That backstopped the tournament at Riviera. So I think it's best to have the absolute lowest expectations possible for Tiger for the balance of 2017.
Chris Ryan, what are you looking forward to most in the last 28 games of the NBA season?
The first real Boogie and Davis clicks, just amazing 60-point, 70-point game from the two of them. And I think the first 160-point Rockets explosion.
Kevin?
Can I look ahead till May?
Sure.
Draft lottery night. That's going to change a lot of things when we look ahead to the offseason. Depending on how that shakes out, could change everything for the options for Paul George or Jimmy Butler this offseason.
The Lakers one's going to be super exciting. So right now we have Brooklyn has the number 1 spot locked up, but then you have Phoenix at 39 losses, the Lakers at 39, and Orlando at 38. And then Philly lurking at 35 in May. I mean, at some point they're going to have to take out TJ McConnell and just, he might have to disappear.
Yeah, he and Joel Embiid are going to have to go on a cruise. It stalls out somewhere in the South Pacific.
They need to take him to South America and then tell him to get in a Jeep and drive around on a mountain for a while. And see if the locals come out and get a little proof of life reference. Man of Fire?
Yeah.
When are we doing that podcast?
Whatever you want.
All right. I am looking forward most to the Celtics making a run at that Cleveland number 1 seed.
Think they're going to sit LeBron for a couple games?
It only takes one
rest him?
LeBron, my calf's tight, I'm out for 2 weeks type of thing. It would just be, I don't know. Cleveland's going to make the finals, but at least it would be nice to have to make them come to a Game 7 in Boston.
Be fun.
And I do kind of wish they had nerds as well. Anyway, all right, enjoy the weekend. Check out my new column that went up at some point Friday afternoon.
Sunday night Oscars show.
Sunday night Oscar show? What's that one?
Greenwald, me, and Dobbins.
Sunday Night Live?
Yeah. After
That's
the Oscars.
exciting.
Yeah.
Periscope and Facebook?
Yep. We might have tuxes on.
You might have tuxes on?
Yeah.
Why didn't you bring this up sooner?
We were busy trying to figure out whether Drew Holiday is better than Alfred Payton, a bag of rocks.
Go check out all of our old podcasts. Don't forget to check out SeatGeek. Download the free SeatGeek app or go to SeatGeek.com. And good luck to my friend Jimmy Kimmel, who's hosting the Oscars in front of an audience of about $110 million. Or 100 million, 10 million. How many people watch the Oscars? 100 million?
Whatever you say.
All he needs is one Donald Trump tweet within the first 40 minutes, and he's off.
I think that's past his bedtime.
He's off. You think so?
Yeah.
Well, the person controlling Donald Trump's Twitter account, just one tweet to get the ball rolling. Anyway, enjoy the weekend, and we'll be back next week on the BS Podcast.